The Department of Humanities is privileged to host its webinar in Black History Month to commemorate the history on which we have built our future. We know that this presentation this afternoon will be another stimulating one, which will give us more fodder for academic discussion. Now, why is history important? If we look back to what our first national hero has said, Marcus Messiah Garvey, he says, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." Are we a rootless tree? I think not. Now, at this time, before we go any further, it is the appropriate thing to do to invite the presence of God into our webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here with you today as we focus on the residue of slavery in modern Jamaica. Before we begin, let us prepare our hearts and minds for the devotional segment of this session. Lord, I thank you for giving us the opportunity to gather together as we will be discussing this very important topic. Lord, I pray that everyone that joins in today on this webinar will be able to learn something new as we will inform them all on the happenings as it relates to this topic. Be with us today. In your name I pray, amen. The scripture of focus for today is Galatians 5 verse 1. Looking at it from the New International Version, it reads, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened by a yoke of slavery." Galatians 5 verse 1 reminds us that Christ has set us free, calling us to live with dignity, justice, and respect. Though slavery has ended, its effects, inequality, prejudice, and systematic injustice still linger. However, Christ's freedom is greater than these forces, empowering us to stand firm and resist oppression. As believers, we must not only embrace this freedom, but also extend it to others, working towards a society where justice and liberty prevail. I will now have the closing prayer. Lord, thank you for providing your word to us, as it is the appropriate thing to look at it in regards to your word and what we're facing today. Lord, I pray that you will continue to open our minds as we continue to understand what is going on in our society and also in relations to your words. Be with us all. In your precious name, I pray. Amen. As we continue today's discussion, let us carry with us the knowledge that Christ has set us free. We will stand in the freedom or may our conversations reflect commitments to break chains of oppression. Together, let us build a society that reflects liberty, dignity, and the love that Christ has given us. Thank you.
Of our history and the need to break the shackles to emancipate ourselves so that we can be at liberty to unite in Christ. And if you look at our topic today, the residue of slavery in modern Jamaica, breaking the shackles of slavery, the mental shackles of slavery in Jamaica, we have been emancipated since August 1, 1834. But as Mr. Williams is pointing out to us, we are mentally shackled. And this is a stimulating topic, and I'm sure that you want to know, am I enslaved? Well, Mr. Williams is going to tell us about that today. Now, let us think back to what Marcus Garvey says. And I asked the question earlier, are we a rootless tree? Or are our roots deeply rooted in our history and our culture? Now, at this point, don't you want to hear from the important stakeholders in our college? Don't you want to hear about our history program? I'm going to turn it over to the key people so that they can share with you the beauty of the history program and the wonderful things that we are here doing at Northern Caribbean University in the Department of Humanities.
Akwaba, that's the Ashanti word for welcome. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the Department of Humanities webinar 2025. My name is Cheryl Andre Reed, and I'm Assistant Professor and Coordinator of History here in the Department of Humanities. I also wear the cap of Acting Curator of the History Museum. Yes, there is a History Museum, and I'll tell you a little bit about it shortly. My task today is to welcome you here and also to share a little bit about our history program here at Northern Caribbean University. Well, it's an excellent program that has been offered. The visionaries from the inception saw that history needed to be included at a liberal arts institution such as NCU. Well, back then it was West Indies College, and now Northern Caribbean University, provide a holistic education for all. And so from 1977, the history program has been offered. And for over the years, we have been revising, tweaking, modifying, and making it relevant to the contemporary era. And so from way to then, though, our accrediting association has been AAA. That's the Adventist Accrediting Association. And we are so delighted to have had them backing us all the way. However, in 2010, we sought to offer ourselves for scrutiny of the University College and Council of Jamaica, that's UCJ. And they came in and reviewed, and they gave us a thumbs up in terms of our program. That's when it was program by program. And so NCU's history, Bachelor of Arts in History program, was accredited in 2010. We got reaccreditation in 2013, again by UCJ. And when we were preparing for our 2016 accreditation, the university at the time, under the leadership of the newly elected president, Dr. Lincoln Edward, decided to put the entire university under institutional accreditation to UCJ. And that is a marvelous idea. NCU became the second university to UWI to have institutional accreditation by UCJ. What that meant, though, is that programs that were never offered or never accredited were now able to be part of that and subsuming the accreditation program under the institutional accreditation. And programs like history that already were accredited could now continue to benefit from institutional accreditation. We have been doing our very best, and we've been dogged over with some problems, but we are hoping to overlook these and to overcome these rather. And so we can continue to offer quality service and quality degree. The majors have not been as large as we want to, and now we're having a glitch in the system, and we are hoping that that glitch will be dealt with quickly, so that those persons who want to pursue a BA in history will be able to do so. But we do offer minors, and we're very proud to know that a number of students have taken advantage of those programs. The religion majors have done minors in history, criminal justice group majors, minor in history, and so forth and so on. So we have been doing our bit. and we continue to do our part to offer quality education. There are some plans in the pipeline. There are plans afoot for us to have short courses and perhaps even a postgraduate program, but we'll talk about that later on when we finally finalize it in due course. But just to let you know, we are moving forward with our program as best as possible. Now, the chair of the department has quoted the quotation that I wanted to quote about Marcus Garvey, that the people without knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. I really agree with you wholeheartedly. And indeed, because we understand not only the value of Marcus Garvey's work, but also his words, but also his work, we have staged a display in the Haram Walters Resource Center for this February 2025, and we currently have it until next February 28th. We'll be there. It's entitled Pan-Africanism and Garveyism in Retrospect. And we are inviting persons to come and also to see the display, an excellent display. And of course, because Marcus Garvey was recently pardoned by the outgoing US President, Joe Biden, that is, of course, a current event and very interesting part of it. The last thing I want to mention is that, as I mentioned, there is a history museum, and we currently have an artifacts drive to try and bolster our collection. And please, if you have items at all, remember Jamaica's motto is out of many one people. So we want African, Caribbean objects, as well as British, Chinese, Indian, whatever culture that help to make up the rich culture that Jamaica has. And we want to review these and get them into the collection, and also restage and reopen our library, which has been closed since March 2020 because of COVID-19 experience. So please, if you have items and you wish to donate them, please, you can email me, cheryl.reed@ncu.edu.jm, or call me at 876-892-2223, and we'll be glad to review your pieces and to add them to our collection. Thank you so much for allowing me to present on our course. And I too am anxious to hear what our history faculty has to share about his research on the residue of slavery in modern Jamaica. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. Can you imagine? I was muted. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mrs. Street. So I'm Venice Madden, and I currently serve as the chair for the Department of Graduate Psychology. And my task here this afternoon is to bring greetings to you all on behalf of our Dean, Dr. Vincent Peterkin, and of course, for the College of Humanities, Behavioral and Social Sciences. So here we go. We are grateful to be part of this very important webinar as we examine the residue of slavery in modern Jamaica. Slavery has left an indelible mark on our society, shaping economic structures, social hierarchies, and cultural identities that persist to this day. Though we have made strides in justice and progress, we still grapple with systemic inequalities, colorism, economic disparities, and cultural tensions that trace their roots to our colonial past. As you reflect on this historical and contemporary impact, or on the historical and contemporary impacts of slavery, I trust you will also find hope and resilience in your faith. Romans 12:12 encourages us to be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Our faith provides us with the strength to endure challenges and the hope to envision a brighter future for all Jamaicans. May this webinar be a time of insightful learning, meaningful dialogue, and spiritual enrichment also. Let us work together to confront the residue of slavery and to foster a society where justice, equality, and compassion prevails. So, on behalf of the college, I extend commendations to Dr. Harrison and her team, and a warm welcome to all our speakers, participants, and guests. Thank you, and do have a meaningful and impactful session together. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure now, if you weren't feeling welcome before, I'm sure Dr. Madden's warm and inviting speech, making you feel comfy on that digital couch, has made you want to, know a little bit more about our college. And Mrs. Reed, lovely presentation on the program being offered here at NCU in history. Now, I just want to take up where Dr. Madden left off in speaking about slavery and Christianity. If we think back to the book of Genesis, we are told of the Hebrews in their enslavement. And we think back to the role that Moses played in liberating the Hebrews from the rule of Egyptian slavery. Now, how is that applicable to our Christian experience and our modern lives? And this is what I'm sure Mr. Williams will tell us. Like a modern day Moses, he is about to take us out of the land of mental slavery into the wonderful land of Canaan for mental emancipation. Aren't you excited about it? Don't you want to know a little bit more about Mr. Williams? At this time, let's hear who Mr. Williams is before he makes his keynote address.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Fitzroy Williams, is a distinguished educator and scholar whose commitment to academic excellence and passion for education have made a lasting impact in the field of higher learning. Since joining the faculty of Northern Caribbean University in 2007, Mr. Williams has played a pivotal role in shaping the minds of students and contributing to the university's mission of providing quality education rooted in Christian values. Mr. Williams's academic journey is marked by a rich and diverse educational background. He holds an associate degree in geography, a foundation that sparked his interest in understanding the world's physical and cultural landscapes. Building on this foundation, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in History, equipping him with a deep appreciation and knowledge of historical contexts and their influence on contemporary societies. His commitment to advancing his expertise led him to pursue a master's in education with an emphasis in curriculum and instruction, demonstrating his dedication to shaping effective teaching methodologies and enhancing the learning experience for his students. Further complementing his academic credentials are his graduate studies in heritage studies, reflecting his keen interest in preserving and understanding cultural heritage and its significance in education. Throughout his tenure at Northern Caribbean University, his approach to teaching emphasizes critical thinking, cultural awareness, and the practical application of theoretical concepts. His interdisciplinary expertise allows him to provide a holistic educational experience, blending history, geography, and educational theory in ways that resonate with his students and prepare them for both academic and professional success. As an educator, Mr. Fitzroy Williams embodies the principles of dedication, scholarship, and mentorship. His unwavering commitment to the growth and development of his students and his contributions to the academic community make him a respected and invaluable member of Northern Caribbean University. Through his teaching, research, and service, Mr. Williams continues to shape the future of education and inspire the next generation of leaders and scholars. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fitzroy Williams. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and to be presenting on this awesome topic. As sat here listening to those persons talking, Dr. Harrison, talking about history and what Marcus Garvey said about us, having that root and rooted in our past. We need to know where we're coming from in order to chart a better path as to where we're going. And, considering the scripture in Galatians, as we strive to liberate ourselves from that slavery, God has done it for us, and it's time for us to shake off those shackles. But as we deliberate on this topic, the residue of slavery in modern Jamaica, what really is slavery? Here we're looking at a term, a word, an institution, wherein persons were held against their will, forced to work against their will, oftentimes in a violent environment, punishment, all of those things. But yet, we had persons who decided that enough is enough. Let us end this. And indeed, emancipation came. 1834, 1838. Emancipation changed that dynamics, that institution of slavery. But have we changed? Have we moved away from that? Have we shaken off that mental shackles of slavery? This is something that we're going to be examining. Let's look at it. Here we're saying the arrows of slavery have left a deep penetrated stain in the lives of African descendants of Jamaica. Yes, indeed. The treatment that they went through that they endured from their homeland. It was so bad that they felt demoralized because they were now reduced to slavery. Enslaved Africans were viewed as properties of the Europeans and treated as livestock. Enslaved Africans and their descendants in Jamaica suffered over 300 years of slavery in the island. It is no doubt that the enslaved African descendants would find themselves fighting to erode this psychological imprint of slavery. Yes, 300 years of enslavement certainly would have impacted them immensely. But what happened? To break the mental shackles of slavery, it is necessary to eradicate certain practices which we adopt from our slave society into our modern Jamaica, present Jamaican culture, which we are free, we're dynamic. Why then are we still holding on to these habits of slavish mentality, physical abuse, skin bleaching, sexual exploitation? Yes, just to name a few. These are areas that we are now forced to remove from our culture. Yes? These elements are the reality of mental stagnation of the Jamaican people, who are still tied up in the syndrome of mental slavery. Bob Marley reiterated what many would have used as emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds, but we'll look at it some more. What about this mental slavish attitude that we have been fostering for many years? In many respects, some Jamaicans are still exhibiting behaviors which were practiced during slavery. Can you imagine that? Look how long we have been emancipated, but yet we're still holding on. In fact, one could argue that we still need to emancipate ourselves from this mental slavery. You know, Vybz Kartel in his song Chain, or people are aware. A revelation of the means of slavish control. But to what extent can we say this statement is a reflection of the attitude of many Jamaicans who are still unconsciously holding on to the elements of slavery that are strangling us today? Is it a true reflection? Are we truly free? Marcus Garvey said, if strive for such liberation in our modern society, it is our duty now to re-socialize our people, to eliminate slavish mentality and practices out of modern Jamaica. The question could be, how can we do that? How will we do that? How will we achieve this when our psyche would have been marred? But it goes back, re-socializing our youth. Re-socialization takes place. We have to adjust our curriculum. In order to facilitate this, we need to adjust our curriculum to facilitate this re-socialization. That is crucial to break the mental shackles of slavery. But let's look at it. It continued. It's not only that we have hold on to the slavish mentality, but we're exercising this through physical abuse. Yes, the Plantation Society of Jamaica created opportunities for physical abuse to be practiced in a cultural manner that even outsiders looking in would think it is something acceptable. The abuse of persons on the plantation knew no gender barriers, since females were treated with much cruelty as their male counterparts. It is not hard to imagine why the society still practices such harshness towards women, since our psyche seems to be permanently fixed on living out what our foreparents embraced as the norm. Can you imagine that? While most, if not all, the females on the plantation were ill-treated, the female domestic slaves were perhaps more vulnerable to physical punishment due to their close proximity to their masters, according to Beckles. Yes? This is the same reality for slaves in Jamaica. Beckles wrote about what happened in Barbados. Jamaica was no different. In some literature, it was worst in Jamaica. Their presence in the great house would often entice their masters to abuse them. Women, like men, were viewed as personal properties of the planter, which meant that they were open to total exploitation and abuse by their owners. While labor, yes, labor was the primary goal of the planter or the planters, the enslaved women's bodies were also abused. There were no differentiation in punishment between men and women when it comes on to the law. Neither were pregnant women exempted. Can you imagine that? What was happening then? And we're saying that this is still happening in our society today. According to Shepherd, the 1826 Jamaican law states that a woman could not be given more than 10 lashes if an overseer was not present. But if an overseer was present, then the woman could get 39 lashes maximum. Indeed, modern Jamaica is still exerting this high level of physical abuse on our people. Women, children are still suffering from that. How are we going to liberate these individuals? These are residues of slavery that still exist. Can we change the tide? Again, while we're looking at that, we're also looking at the idea that our people have now reached a stage that it appears as if they are not okay with the color of their skin. Skin bleaching has become a significant part of our modern society. Skin bleaching was also practiced during slavery. Yes. Bob Marley in his song War noted that until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, there is war. Can you imagine the color of the skin? What is the significance of the color of our skin in modern Jamaica? What is it? Is our blackness important? Firstly, was it of importance during slavery? Was the appearance of the slave important? Certainly. Colored slave, which were mixed race, offspring of blacks and white through the process of miscegenation, got the head position in their respective fields. Yes. So yes, indeed, the color of your skin was very important. According to Patterson, in Sociology of Slavery, all skilled areas were filled with colored heads. Domestic servants, the blacksmiths, the boilermen, the coopers, etc. All the skilled workers, the head of those areas were filled with colored individuals. The skin color of the enslaved Africans were important. Why? It is viewed that they were more docile, efficient, and more acceptant of their lot as slaves. These colored slaves, enslaved individuals, were born into slavery. They knew no freedom. And so they were more acceptant of their position. They relished in this. Skin color gave some enslaved status among the enslaved population. And the Jamaican society still reflect and perpetuate this practice today. Yes, patches indicate that they consider themselves as a superior race to the Blacks. You know, as we look at this, we can understand why today so many of our people believe that it is important, it is acceptable to bleach their skin. The free colored group was a middle class position between the whites and the slave group, the Black slave groups. With such privilege, some slave women preferred to have children for the whites than their own Black counterparts. This we call biological bleaching. Having children to change the shade of their complexion, to ensure that they were not Black, so as to encourage the whites to put them in higher class, higher position than the Black slaves. Modern Jamaicans are still practicing this today to give their children socioeconomic leverage. When are we going to eradicate these mentality out of our society? Additionally, chemical bleaching is also another method used by our people to seek advantage in the socio-economic landscape of Jamaica. So we moved away from the biological bleaching. Well, in addition to the biological bleaching, there are some of us who believe that we should, if we're dark in complexion, we should marry someone who is brown so that our children can become lighter. There is a perception that if you're lighter skinned, then you will get ahead. And if that is not possible, then chemical bleaching is another way. Yes? There's a saying in Jamaica, if you're brown, come around. If you're Black, stay at the back. This mentality is grounded in slavery. Clearly, the residue of slavery, the colorization of opportunities as reflected in slavery is still languishing in modern Jamaica. Again, re-socializing our people would help us to erode this mental stagnation, to get rid of, to wash away this residue of slavery, to change the perception of the Black. Yes. When we consider sexual orientation of our people, the behavior of young men, women, why do we behave in such way? What is the reason for our sexual orientation in the manner that it is in? Shepherd notes that sexual abuse of enslaved women by white men was a feature of society in the Caribbean. This is an indication that Jamaican women were not spared the wrath of sexual molestation by their owners either. A matter of fact, Orlando Patterson stated that white men took unto themselves slave wives, while some of the women were raped by their owners. So some Black women, some slaves were raped, yes, no control. The whites also took wives, slave concubines. What happened there? Even after a night with this woman, she would be required to continue her duties, and will be whipped as necessary. It gets even worse. Tony Martin, in his book, Caribbean History, stated that Thomas Thistlewood in 18th century Jamaica distinguished himself from other slave-owning rapists by openly admitting that he practiced rape as punishment. He practiced rape as punishment. I can imagine they weren't aware of the psychological scar that those behavior would have on these slaves and future generation. Patterson noted that if an overseer sent for a girl for such purpose, she is obliged to come, or else flogged. Yes. Teens in Jamaica, in many communities in Jamaica, are still subjected to these requests by area leaders, and parents are obliged to send them too. This is out of fear or financial gains. Are we going to continue to subject our society, our young girls, to this sort of practice? This is another way in which we can see the residue of slavery being reflected in our modern society. We have to change. Poverty had led many of our young girls into what Patterson described during slavery in Jamaica as overwhelming pressure. So they gave in to make the best of its rewards. Sometimes we ask our young people, why do you do the thing? Him have money. Throughout the various literature, it is clear that women and even men had to allow themselves to be sexually exploited. Men of wealth and power are preying on our young and vulnerable. If walls could talk, many things would be revealed, and we would ask the question, how did we reach here? When? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to change? But this is a deep-rooted situation. During slavery, slave breeding was considered a vital part of the society. Both men and women were selected for breeding purposes. The men were considered to be studs. Today we call them village rams. In many cases, men, the studs, were hired out to various plantations to assist in the breeding of their slaves. moving from one plantation to another, being confined in an area to conduct breeding. Many children were born in slavery as a result of this practice. However, the fathers were not responsible for these children. The studs would have fathered many children, many of whom they would never know about. Today, we have men in our society who is perpetuating this same behavior. Carrying out this practice, young men become irresponsible because they are living out the residue of slavery that is ingrained in their psyche. We need to change the attitude of these young men. Modern Jamaica seems to have continued this tradition from slavery with a new name, the village ram. According to Ferguson, in an interview with one Mr. C. Campbell, noted, the only place he has not slept with women are Portland and St. Mary. Speaking about Jamaica. This is another Jamaican who is reporting that he is going into retirement after many years of humanizing. He claimed that he's tired. He claimed to have slept with over 100 women across 12 of Jamaica's 14 parishes. And I can tell you, he has company. Many have testified that they have done the same thing. Ferguson further note that in the past, this was known to be the general attitude among Jamaican men. Today, we call it serial monogamy. Mr. Campbell is just one of the many who are living out their ancestral stud behavior and are creating social problems in the society. We need to put an end to this. We can't continue in a modern society to be living out things that had happened in slavery. Enough is enough. We need to, one, liberate the minds of men so that we'll ultimately liberate their bodies, as Marcus Garvey said. We need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And I said, none but ourselves can free our minds. In conclusion, it is clear that over 300 years of experience in slavery has left a deep scar on the psyche of the Jamaican people. Examine the way we are socialized with slavish mentality, the physical abuse of women and children, the bleaching of our skin both biologically and physically or chemically, and our sexual orientation and practice certainly demonstrate the lingering residue from slavery. As a modern society, we need to eradicate those languishing traits of slavery from our society and embrace the modern reality that slavery has ended. Thank you.
Thank you. What a provocative and thought-provoking presentation. I am sure that there are a myriad of questions now throbbing through your mind. Mr. Williams, that was a beautiful presentation. Now, I just, in the middle of your presentation, Frantz Fanon's quote, "The oppressed will always believe the worst about themselves," is manifested in what you are saying. As you have said, we are 300 years removed from slavery, yet mentally, it is as if we are still in 1830. Now, the privilege is mine to introduce this wonderful panel that we have here today. Now, it is an all-female panel. I know, Mr. Williams. You have spoken a lot about the burden that women would have brought in slavery, both physically in their bodies as childbearers and as laborers. So let us hear from our panelists. We have the wonderful Mrs. Dana James Williams, who is the coordinator for the Center of Language Learning and who has a specialization in pre-Columbian culture. We have also with us Ms. Denise McIntyre, who is also a historian, and she is the coordinator of the ESL program here at Northern Caribbean University. And we also have with us this afternoon Mrs. Caroline Wiles-Blair, who is the coordinator of freshman composition. Now I'm going to ask Mrs. James Williams to begin with her first set of questions to kickstart off a most stimulating and titillating discussion.
Capacity of our people is still hinged on certain slavish mentality. And as a result of that, we can't seem to get beyond this slave idea, this colonial past. Until we liberate ourselves, then we will see greater progress.
Thank you. What are some of the traits, do you say, that come up in society of slavish mentality?
Well, as before, when we think about it today, our leaders, many of our people still see our leaders as colonial masters. Yes? We don't allow our people to exercise certain freedom without over them with punishment. A matter of fact, our people seems to are lethargic in responding to instructions without looking at the punishment that they need to get. We need to get beyond that. So it's not only that our leaders are viewed as colonial masters, but our people still looking on to say, as if I can't do this without being threatened to be punished.
That is so true, Mr. Williams. I agree with you 100% with that. Even in regular society among different employers and employees, we see where employees refuse to work unless they're being stood over by an overseer or a supervisor who is behind them like a slave master, ensuring that certain jobs are being done or certain duties are being carried out. Now, let's take a look at physical abuse, because this is one of the things you mentioned, and you spoke about women being beaten and we can put it over to say that children are also included in this, where we as Jamaicans, we tend to believe that physical punishment is the best way to treat a child and to train a child. But how can we as a nation overcome physical abuse among our women and children?
The reality is that we need to recognize the scar that physical abuse has been, doing to our people, our children, our women, even boys, young men. We need to recognize that it has changed their entire socialization. And so in order for us to change that and to change the behavior, because what is happening, we're seeing where fathers today are exercising physical punishment because that was what they endured. We need to re-engage the society, re-engage the curriculum to teach that, listen, physical abuse is not okay. However, we have to bear in mind, the Bible tells us that we should not spare the rod and spoil the child. How do we reconcile with that? The reality is that correcting the child is crucial. Abusing the child, abusing our women, that is a no-no. And we need to re-socialize our people to recognize the difference between physically abusing someone and schooling them in the right direction. We need to train our people, train up the child in the way they should go so that when they get old, they will not depart. That is what we need to do as it relates to how we treat our people.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Dr. Harrison?
Physical punishment and the history of slavery and our tendency towards violence that has followed us for the last 200 years. Such an insightful view. Now, at this time, I'm going to invite Mrs. Wells Blair to join us with her questions for Mr. Williams.
Are you seeing and hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I would agree that this presentation was a good presentation. I just have a concern because it's so funny that you use this in your presentation, but I just used this in the class. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. I told my students you can open your essay like that and then ask the question, are we truly emancipated today? And they were to write on it. But truly you have shown with the bleaching, because that is a concern of mine, because right around us every day, you go into stores, I've not really seen it in the banks, but you go into stores, you go into supermarket, you watch people right around you, and you might see their faces full of acne or it's kind of reddish, and their knuckles are so black, and their toes, if they wear sandals, is black, and their their ankles are so black because they rather have all of this discoloration, all of this acne on their face, just so that they could appear lighter. So how can we, my question is, how can we as parents, because there are some parents that actually show preference to a lighter skinned child. There are some parents that actually introduce bleaching to their kids. How can we as a nation get the parents to understand that the color of the skin is not what is important? And it's not the color of the skin. How can we because if at home they're getting the pressure and right around too, I don't know what can we do to make the young people be emancipated from mental slavery? Because the bleaching is, as you say, because of slavery, the mulattoes and all of those people were probably treated better. And it's still here today. They believe, you hear people say they want a brown person, as you say, because he'll make a brown baby or whatever the case is. But how can we, when right around, people are bleaching, friends are bleaching, parents might be encouraging it, and we see ads on, even when you go to buy a hair dye or you go to buy something like makeup, the girls that are on these ads, most of them are of a certain color. And then they're seeing it. So how can we tell them to emancipate themselves when right around it's just in their face? I just don't know. How can we get them to feel free?
The first method of addressing this, the government need to recognize the harm that these things are doing to our society so that they can put things in place. One, public education. Yes. So once we publicly denounce these behavior and we get the various stakeholders to buy into this, to discourage people from practicing these, then we'll make a great impact. Additionally, our schools need to decide, in accordance with the education policy and the government, that we can't tolerate this because it's happening in our schools. We need to target our parents. We need to let our parents be aware that this is not good. It's not looking good. It's not healthy. And so we need to get them to buy into this idea that bleaching is a no-no. And if the wider society rejects this practice, then I think we'll have a greater chance for it to be for us to get rid of it, to stamp it out of our society, re-socializing our people. Let our people recognize that, you do this, you're still practicing slavery. You're still practicing traits that our ancestors did. We need to move away from that. And so re-socialization, I think, is crucial, and we need to address it. It's a systemic problem, really. And so all the stakeholders, government, family, the church has a role to play in us eradicating this behavior. Again, as we said, we need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Indeed, we are enslaved. A matter of fact, we have been emancipated, but we are still holding on. We need to address the deep psychological impact that slavery has on us. And we have to do it now. We have to start now. We're late, but it's better late than never.
We really need to start. I totally agree that we really need to start now. Schools alone, we have to get it into the parents' heads too, because if you see your child bleaching, I don't know, from early, I don't know. I think parents, the church, we have so much programs at the church, as you say. If the church or parents would let their child know from early, love your skin color, love your tone, I think it would help. Because right around, as I was saying before, in society, even my kids who use Snapchat, sometimes they laugh. When you use Snapchat and you do a filter, the filter automatically makes you lighter. And it's just so sad that it's like it is showing you that you would look prettier if you were whiter. And that's why I find it so difficult for people to emancipate themselves from mental slavery when society all across the board still pushes
to accept
it.
Yes.
So I don't know. That's just my concern anyway. I don't know how we're going to stop it for children, but that's just the one concern, because my previous panelist, Miss Williams, kind of addressed other things that I had to say, but that was my concern. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The Bible advocates that we love ourselves. God made us, that we are all unique and special and made in God's wonderful image. And that is a wonderful piece of emancipation that has been given to us by the Bible. And yet still we are shackled to an ideology that teaches us that we are only beautiful if we are light-skinned, something that has carried over from slavery. And I am hurt by the observation, but yet I am wonderfully pleased that we are at a point where we can discuss something as pertinent as this and how much it shapes our nation moving forward. Because as Marcus Garvey has pointed out, if we have no confidence, we are twice defeated in the race of life. Now, Miss McIntyre, I invite you to come to the floor and to share your set of questions and concerns.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. As I said, good afternoon, everyone. Very good presentation, Mr. Williams. I was just saying that some of the questions I had have already been addressed, but I have still one talking a little bit more about the bleaching and colorism. And hearing Mrs. Blair talking, and I remember even as a child, Pond's bleaching cream, Nadiola bleaching cream, these things were always so prevalent from way back when. You know, even magazines, even the Jamaica Gleaner, the ones in the long time ago, you would see them running these ads for these bleaching creams because it is considered beauty being light skin. But then another part of this too is economic advantage. And it's not only here alone, you find it is in the wider world that if you're light skinned, you can probably get ahead. So even though we talk to our people about bleaching and some of them know, they still continue because they feel they will get ahead because people will hire them for jobs. Women, as you say, having children for lighter skinned people, yet the children will get ahead. Even when you talk about the mixed people on the plantations, the ones living in the house, they were given favors, even the children, because a lot of times, sometimes the children were the children of the master. So they were favored that way. So it is so hard to pull that out now because we really live in so much in a materialistic world right now where everything is money, you know? So I don't know how we're going to get them out of that habit of bleaching their skin. And the thing is too, when you see them, as Mr. Blair was mentioning, the different color tones, yes, it totally destroys their skin, but they still continue to do it because, and I think now present day, a lot of it is economics, what they can get moving ahead. And the society was so entrenched in this colorism, and it's still there. It is still prevalent even today. That is my take.
You know, as you said, and this is why I believe the government has a role to play to, you know, educate the wider society, the various stakeholders, persons who seem to be ones who want persons of a particular color, shade, complexion, so to speak, until they recognize that, you know, we're putting the society at a disadvantage and not just the blacks. You know, but as if we go back to what Bob Marley said in his song, until yes, until the color of the man's skin is of no more significance to the color of his eyes, you know, then we're going to have this chaos going on. We need to change. And this is why it is so crucial, again, going back to what Marcus Garvey said about, you know, emancipating ourselves from mental slavery. The reality is that some of us are not aware that this behavior and practice, this idea that we need to be brown to get ahead, to get jobs, you know, until we get our employers to say, we can employ Black people. We don't need only brown people for the face of our organization. Until we get the society to move away from those notions, then it's going to be very difficult.
Oh, I just remember one thing you just said. Oh, as a parting, talking about employment. Do you know we still have companies right here in Jamaica that only hire light-skinned women?
See what I'm talking, and this is where
At a sales front.
right.
They do basically sales. They have to go out, but they only hire light-skinned females.
And
right
until
now.
we are able to change that, the problem is going to be very hard. You know, we have to get beyond that and to recognize that we are doing our people an injustice if we continue along that path.
This is a stimulating discussion that could go on all day. These are the thoughts of research and interrogative questions that are being asked at the Department of Humanities at Northern Caribbean University. And I hope that your interest has been piqued and that you will be interested in joining up to do some courses with us so that you can learn more about Jamaican history as well as learn also about the history of the world in order to situate yourself and understand your significance in the world at large. Now, Mr. Williams, your presentation has given a world of thought. And it brings me to one question that I would like to ask you, if ideally you could do one thing to change your attitudes, let me change the question. If you could change one of our attitudes, which one would it be and why?
Is our slavish mentality. One, we need to educate our people of the various things that they're doing that are entrenched in slavery. And if we get them to buy into that and to recognize that these things that they're practicing today are actually residues of slavery, then I think that will go a far way in changing the behavior. No one really wants to associate themselves with the slaverish ideal openly. And so to bring that to the fore, I think would go a long way in re-socializing people as they recognize that what they're doing is to perpetuate slavery. So bringing them to that consciousness, that slavish mentality that is within us, we need to get it out. With that, I think, if we can get them to recognize that and we can get them to re-socialize themselves, I think we would make a significant change in the wider society.
Very wonderful answer. Now, are there any last words that you would like to share with us as we wrap up this webinar, as well as wrap up Black History Month?
Yes, indeed. I want us to recognize, and I want us to, as participants and as viewers, every opportunity we get to educate our people about our past, we need to do that. Also, I want us to use our influence to help our society to recognize that the bad traits of slavery is what they're practicing and help to point them to a direction where they will change. If we individually can impact one person gradually over time, every member of the Jamaican society will be aware and will have an opportunity to make a difference. I think that is what I would say. Tell people about what they're doing, the history of what they're doing, and why they need to change. And I think if we start there, the wider society will be reached and we'll see the change over time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. This has been an exciting presentation, in-depth, well thought out. The panelists, you have been exceptional with your questions. For all of you out there in viewerland, come over to see our museum. Come over to our department. Come and join our history program and see what you will learn about the root from which you have sprung. Now, I want to leave this webinar with an important Black history message from the Honorable First Hero of Jamaica, Marcus Messiah Garvey. And Garvey, as you know, is one who was a strong advocate for breaking the shackles of mental slavery. And he gave the resounding battle cry when he said, "Up, up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will." Now, that is the advocacy that history encourages. Knowledge, cultural knowledge, historical knowledge towards individual discovery. Ladies and gentlemen, students, NCU family at home and abroad, thank you so much for joining our webinar. See you at the next session.